What?
That's your privacy on. Privacy off. Preset one. So preset one is the board.
See how, but it still has me on here.
Just found out she's been be nice.
What is this one?
That one. I broke it.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town of New Shum Town Council meeting for Monday, July 11th. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:03. Anybody wishing to speak from the audience will be asked to rise and use the central microphone to ensure audio for those watching from home. Item number 1 on the agenda is public comment. Does anybody have any public comment of anything that's not currently on the agenda this evening? Jim? Third item, we'll discuss when we get to number 3. That's on the agenda. we'll discuss what we're going to do with that item. That's on our agenda. I'm looking for public comment for items that are not on our agenda right now. We'll get to that when we get to that. Thank you. Hearing none. Item number 2 is correspondence.
I have just one, Andre. I would just like to acknowledge and applaud the owners of Tigerfish, Ross and Brenna. They came before the Historic District Commission and they acknowledged that the structures they built were not in compliance with our ordinances and they were taken down. That's what anybody who has Block Island's best interests in mind should have done, but they did it as opposed to many others who just elongate the process to get the summer in until it continues every year. So thank you, Island residents, Ross and Brenna.
Thank you, Mark. Item number 3, we are not going to discuss that this evening because everything that needed to be discussed was discussed at the last meeting and there's no updates on the topic.
So can I ask?
You can make a public comment on item. We're not going to discuss item 3 tonight.
I actually have
I'm sorry.
a question, if you don't mind, because I was actually going to ask that we schedule a show cause hearing for Ballards. We've all heard how out of control that place has been. I think we have a responsibility to at least have calendared, a public meeting about how out of control it is, decide whether to take action on it. If there are still things that we need to figure out, that's okay. But from what we've heard from Rescue and others, I think we need to at least have on our schedule an opportunity to take action.
This is why we're not going to discuss number 3 this evening, is because the police have an active investigation going on right now. And we don't have facts. I think it's premature to even discuss what you're discussing right now. But like I said, we're not going to discuss item number 3. I thank you for your comments, but we have no facts. We have nothing before us. This is really none of our business right now.
Oh, it very much is our business.
Until the police are fully done with their
See,
investigation.
That's where
Item number 4 on the agenda is to discuss and act on the Block Island Attainable Affordable Housing Funding Survey for consideration. We're not discussing the item on the agenda this evening. And I got to the point where I told you what was going to happen on number 3. Item number 4. We're not discussing this. The chief gave us what he needed to tell us at our last meeting. That's when we discussed it. We're not discussing item number 3. If you'd like to give public comment, which I apologize for not giving you public comment earlier on that, but we're not going to discuss anything on number 3.
What has transpired. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, but I think rationed up to it. So when I talk to people and they say, gee, Brad, yeah, they're saying, we've had every night since the 4th, we've had actual problems. It doesn't. And I think it's where we've got issues. We're not doing grandchildren come here, and I want to make sure there's a problem. It's no different if you lose somebody in the car. Shoot some public announcement about, don't park your car here, because you had vandalism on the car. So, you know, anybody has to have their car shut down, penalties for that. Because they put clock over public in this community. Not this community. Making things on the books. So I think we've got some major serious issues going on. Everybody knows the top 4 or 5. And here, as you say, but I think we're very concerned about it. The banner up would be, let's take Block Island back. Because we've obviously given it away.
Thank you, Jim.
We skipped 2.
Apologies for that. We have correspondence under number 2. Notice of public hearing, major subdivision, master and preliminary plan for Nathan and Kara Stinnett. Are we accepting correspondence, or are we going to set a date of public hearing? Sorry?
Yeah, so we're receiving it because we own land next to them.
Apologize, I get a little confused. That usually sits at the bottom of agendas. Okay, so no action on that. Continued agenda items for July 5th. Number 4, discuss and act on Block Island Attainable Affordable Housing Funding Survey for consideration of future action to raise and or allocate funding for such purpose. We received the funding survey, and I think Alicia and Chris are here to discuss. We did receive all the documents. I don't know if you've got them all, had a chance to pour over them. Appreciate that.
Andre, excuse
Sorry.
me. I went over this survey, and this is a little awkward, but I may be in a position to have a potential conflict down the road with both of the existing bodies.
Thank you.
So
We will
recusing.
be recusing. Okay,
Yep.
thank you, Martha. Chris Waffle, would you like to step forward and discuss your survey results?
Chris. Then I will. The other one you had to stand. Oh my God. 60. We've been spearheading a lot of the Block Island table. Okay. Sorry. Okay, how's that? That can you hear that? Closer. Okay, how's that? Closer. Okay. Oh man. Okay. I'll try and keep this steady voice. Alicia Miro and I have been more or less spearheading this Block Island Attainable Affordable Housing initiative. And you have surveys, you had a community forum, and then the question was, where is the funding going to come from? And we listened to our lobbyists talk about that. And in the interim, we created a survey to try and seek people's opinion on types of funding sources. And, you know, I'm not a professional survey person, but we did try to make a survey up that would investigate what the community felt was reasonable and directing where the funds would come from and where they would go towards. In this effort, I'll just say, I'll read a little bit about our summary. If you can believe, you know, our math, the survey has a 95 confidence level with a margin error of plus or minus 12%. We know more analysis could provide additional insights, but the double-edged sword is getting more information and then alienating people by making too long of a survey. Plus, again, we don't have resources to do a very complicated survey. The majority of the respondents were homeowners or stable renters and made their living providing goods and or services to Block Island. This is most likely representative of those who are affected by property taxes. So we have several conclusions. There is strong support to create more affordable and attainable housing, with those expressing a preference for more focus on affordable versus attainable. There is strong support for the town to create an authority to fund and manage attainable and affordable housing. There is strong support for the use of any federal, state, town, or private funding for creating attainable or affordable housing. So basically, you look at this and you say, if the money's there, the community seems to want to tap into it. There is a preference that any funds raised for attainable affordable housing come from existing resources rather than a new tax, resulting in a tax increase. There is a preference for reallocation of the Block Island Land Trust funding mechanism, currently at 3% of property transfer, to fund attainable affordable housing. We did approach the Land Trust and they have not responded to any concrete ideas, Therefore, if the mission is to be redefined, it will have to come from the town and the state, as it seems like the Land Trust just doesn't want to get into that kind of conversation. To hedge against risks to the Block Island Land Trust, there was a question that built in a 3-year temporary reallocation of the funding to determine if there were unseen consequences in making a change to the Land Trust mission. And please see errata 2 for important information on this issue. So yours truly, in cutting and pasting, made a mistake in the survey. We inserted 2 questions in the survey after day 1 because of some people's comments and did not renumber the references. And question 10 should have been references, question 9 and 7. Question 10 should have been in reference to question 9 instead of 7. And question 13 should have been reference 12 instead of 10. And with respect to whether or not to reallocate land trust funding in question 11, there should have been an option of not to change land trust funding at all, keeping it as it currently is. The draft survey had that, but that option was not uploaded. Answer B and C are the same, and answer C was supposed to be no change choice, was the no change choice. People noted that there was not the no change choice and used other to basically put that into as their answer. Even with all that, it still seemed there was strong support for really allocating the land trust funding currently at its current level towards more attainable or affordable housing, or to put it on a hiatus for a number of years, 3, and see if that funding made a difference to the land trust mission. So in conclusion, I would just say the community sees the need for housing, attainable and affordable housing. They want to use existing resources within the town with no tax increase, and then avail ourselves of any federal, state, or private public partnership funding, and with, again, a preference towards affordable over attainable, but not a great difference. Both types of housing are deemed necessary and important on Block Island.
Chris, I think we all certainly appreciate the time everybody put into this, to produce this and, keep it on the forefront of the news, so to speak, about the affordable housing issue. And I think we appreciate that. Does the council, I'll give public comment in a second, but does the council have any questions or comments?
I have 1 or 2. Chris, when you say from existing resource, and I assume you mean, I'm sorry, I'm on bullet 4 about tax. When you say existing resources, I assume you also mean federal grants, et cetera. But the tax, was that in reference to a comment made during one of the meetings where you could take 1% and add to sales, or what does that tax mean?
That was
just clarifying.
It was more on a property tax.
So a stated property tax, I didn't see.
No, it was, do you want to use existing tax resources from the town for affordable housing, or do you want to create an additional tax? that's where that question was going, and
Okay.
people did not want to create an additional, like, increase in property tax with that carve out towards affordable housing.
Thank you.
I just have a couple. I mean, you know, all five of us have been actively engaged on this issue. So, but I also have to say that professionally, I was a bit of a survey data geek. And you can't make, there is a preference for reallocation of the Block Island Land Trust funding mechanism assertion when you have in the errata that there wasn't a question, that there wasn't an answer that said, I don't want to do that. So, I mean, we've learned a lot, I think, over the last several months, and that is how much that there is a very compelling need. There's a need for quick action. We're going to have to source the money for this from multiple places. I think the great top line of this is that there is remarkable consensus about all of those things. I do worry that when you make an assertion that based on a survey of 68 willing respondents, that it's very hard to make an assertion about what people, where people actually want, how they want this funded. That's all. It's just, it's got to, there's a data problem here.
There actually is more than that. There's a resource problem, and you have not allocated us any resources to this. This is all volunteer. And we did the best we could do with the time that we have available. If you want something that is more in depth, as some people in here have noted, you have to be proactive and tell us what resources you can afford to us to do this. And with regard to the errata, yes, there was a mistake made, but people noted that and they used other to use that choice to give their opinion of no change. So we did, if you look at the data, you'll see that no change in the Block Island Land Trust is an answer, and it was used in the other selection category.
Chris, I'm a friend and supporter here, but I mean, I'm just pointing out, I'm a friend and supporter, and the funding sources will hopefully make themselves clear. I'm sorry, but I worked on this stuff for an entire career, and it's hard to make the assertion that you make in that bullet point and then have in the errata that it's a question that didn't have valid volunteer
And again, I'm
responses.
going to
That's
just
all.
I'm just going to
all.
point out to you, you can pick and all you want, pull it apart. But let me just tell you, people noted that. I'm answering your concern. Okay, so, and it was 66 respondents, not 68. And what do you do as far as outreach? Again, if you want a more populated response, you've had 8 months to do something about this, okay? And we're doing the best we can with what we have, which is not much time. So either become proactive and giving us resources, or creating, as we have asked, and has been mentioned in many town meetings, create a position to do this. And don't leave it up to people who are just trying to do the best they can with the resources they have. If you're not going to give us the resources, then we're the best thing you have. Okay.
Donkey. Okay, so the one thing I would say, and getting the land trust topic for the second, and I think you know this, Chris and Alicia, but for everybody else, there have been a number of meetings up in Providence with housing authorities, with trying to figure out about, as new budgets were finally allocated or being allocated, how do we get some of that? Cindy has been very, very active in those meetings. And so I think the biggest point that you made, Chris, in my mind is everybody would love federal, state funding. We all want to go after that. Funding is right now the number one thing. I don't think there's any question about need. I mean, we can argue how much need, but that's arguing details. Right. And I think the most important thing right now is using every resource we can to go after all the funding we possibly can. I believe, based on the conversations, there's going to be a number of things, at least in dialogue and hopefully coming through over the next 6 months. Yeah, who knows how the state government's really going to work. But it's, what I take away from this in macro is let's get as much money as we can and let's start filling the resource needs we have. And that's all about housing, whether it's rental or it's ownership.
My observation of the town, excuse me, in many things is that there is a desire to do things and an inability to capture those things because of not having enough, I'll say, expert resources in these areas. So if you do want to capture federal, state, private partnership funding, you need to create a resource that can go do that. The way you are structured now, I think you're going to be seen as a lower tiered initiative. And I don't think that the funding groups are going to see us as a win. And quite frankly, I think they gravitate to those entities, the town or government entities that are better organized than the town of New Shore in this initiative. So my observation is the town, like in many other things, just misses the boat on so many grant opportunities that are out there over many, many different areas. And this is one that, again, you've had 8 months to really allocate some people to this with an official job to go after this. And I think that's what you're going to have to do if you're going to be successful. You can say you want to do it, but you don't have the resources currently that will have a high probability of success, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
I'm a little more optimistic than you are, Chris. The fact that we now have lobbyists that are aggressively pursuing as much, whatever money is there. The fact that affordable housing is the buzzword now, where apparently money is available. I am going to bring up a term that I guess I authored, and that is subsidy extortion. Everyone thinks there's money out there, and so much of it, if indeed it's available, comes with contingencies that will not apply well or at all to Block Island. So I don't want anyone getting the wrong impression that we're not pursuing money. Number one, we are. And number two, we got to remember that monies that are available have to comply what we want to comply with out here.
We tried to capture that in the question, saying with each level you could go up in the chain of funding from local to federal, there comes increasing restrictions of how you have to use that funding. And it still did not seem in the survey that people were overly concerned with that. They seem to accept the strings that come with it. And with those strings probably come different types of housing projects. Like, I don't think you can do the local things that we think will work fastest and best for the community using federal money. I don't know that because I'm not an expert. But again, unless we don't know what you're working on, I don't think. We don't know what the town really has as a plan. And maybe there isn't one formed yet. But if you could, the town could communicate a strategy to us, I think that would help a lot. And we would feel more confident of a favorable outcome in this area. I'm not trying to be argumentative. We just we put a lot of time into this. And again, I just everything from energy to the ecosystem to whatever you think about. There's so many grant funding opportunities out there that the town just has missed. I wrote a grant for the Great Salt Pond and infrastructure. It was never even presented to you folks. You'll never find anybody else that will do that again. And so you had a grant writer, but that grant writer was very poorly used. A lot of squandered opportunities. This opportunity, we'd like to hear more about how you're going to make it actionable from the town's perspective. What are you pursuing? We just don't know. Okay, so it's a lot of frustration, and it takes us time to get to this. It took us a long time to get here. To be here before you, it just takes time.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
The lady in the back there, you've had your hand up for quite some time. Could you step up to the microphone and identify yourself, please?
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
I've lived mostly elsewhere, but I've spent 40 plus. I'm Mary Lutz, okay? And I am professionally trained in both the development and administration of random sample surveys in communities in need. And I've done this for quite a long time. My training is with my doctorate in health economics from Columbia University, and my postdoctorate is in epidemiology. Now, I am not here to talk so much about sample surveys and so on and how they ought to be conducted. You all know that a SurveyMonkey survey is not going to represent a population. And unless it's able to reach 100% of the target population, it's very difficult to apply any statistical error with certainty to that population. This particular survey, however, because it is an attempt to give an objective view of a broad spectrum of the population here on Block Island, succeeded in some ways. It succeeded in reaching those who responded, a majority of the homeowners. A minority of the renters were represented in this survey. Now, those are the respondents, okay? There are certain things data-wise that can be done with such a survey of such a small dimension. Some of that would be to cross-tabulate the information, homeowners versus renters, seasonal versus full-time, those working on the island with those not working on the island. That data from this survey is available, and you can look in a very broad way at how those different groups responded to those questions. This requires some statistical gymnastics that aren't within the resources of those who produce this survey. Now, that said, what can we get out of it? I think that the major points were well described in terms of the executive summary that was given. I do think that the next stage in this, and I'm a professional researcher, so I would be expected to say we need more research, we need it to be more scientifically done. If we randomly sampled and compared with the census information on income, et cetera, for 02807, we'd get much better picture of how representative this tiny little sample might be. All of that being said, I'm not asking for more research to be done. I'm saying as a member of the community, what needs to be done is have the next step be a real discussion between those in need of affordable, attainable housing and changes in their tax structure with regard to property, and other stakeholders in this discussion. And I realize that resources are the primary thing behind whether that discussion can be held in an open forum or not. But as a person who has observed and worked and lived on the island for some time, I do recognize that this is not a question so much of where the resources are coming from, but of political will. And that discussion between those who are in need and those who are taxpayers and have other stakeholder interests in this is only going to be satisfactory if everybody participates. This is a question of civic engagement. And that's what I wanted to say tonight.
Thank you very much for your comments this evening. Cindy, do you have a comment?
Good evening. My name is Cindy Pappas, and I'll speak generally on behalf of the Block Island Housing Board. First thing I want to say is that the Housing Board truly embraces and is very happy with Chris and Alicia's energy, enthusiasm, and pushing the issue of housing to the forefront of everybody. I'm not a statistical person. I got through Statistics 101 and that was it. So, we can debate, the efficacy of surveys, but really what it tells us is what we all know. We need more housing. We need rental housing. We need all types of housing. And what Chris and Alicia are doing is basically just getting the public, this in the public eye and motivating everybody, to step it up. And so for that, kudos, really appreciate it. I just want to take the opportunity to, in this forum, which is a little bit wider than what the average housing board meeting gets in audience, is just to say what's happening right now. And there are some very exciting things happening. I'm not going to go and outline what we've accomplished to date, but I think Block Island should be very proud of what we have done in the cause of affordable and attainable housing. And I also want to say that the previous council, this current council, has been committed to this cause. Now, how do we translate that into action is where the frustration comes in, but it does take time. So I just want to give you an update that I hope will make people feel a little bit more positive. The Housing Board right now has a piece of property we are grappling with over on the west side. We're hoping to create 8 to 10 units of affordable rental housing, which the community seems to want to have. We have most recently engaged the services of a professional consultant that came highly recommended to us from Rhode Island Housing, Barbara Sokoloff and Associates. We are just in the infancy stages of working with Barbara and our architect, Barbara Bester, who is a property owner on Corneck Road and has been donating her services. So we thank her for that. But it's preliminary, but Sokoloff and Associates are giving us every confidence that there will be state and federal funding for this project. They're telling us they think 100%. I'll believe it when I see it, but it is very exciting. And we are starting to get some of those professional resources that we need to get this job done. So I know for many of you, you may be sitting there saying it's too little and it's so slow, but when you think of a community of this size and the political will that this council has expressed, and the Housing Board and people like Chris and Alicia that are really lobbying, I really think great things are ahead of us. So I ask for your patience and continued enthusiasm and support. And I think, good things are ahead of us.
Thank you, Cindy. Hold on, Chris. I'll give David Lewis.
David Lewis, and I have the hearing aid. I didn't intend to speak tonight, but some of these speakers have made such good points that I wanted to offer some additional comment of my own. Especially, I appreciate what Cindy just said, and she summarized essentially the meat or the real takeaway from what Keith and the lady in the back who spoke about the statistical underpinnings of some of the things she's knowledgeable about. I think I want to make it very clear. I read the survey top to bottom and I chose not to fill it out because I just didn't like the construct and it didn't give me the opportunity. It required me to think a lot harder than I wanted to think, quite frankly. And you know me, I generally don't run away from chores like thinking. I did note the absence of the option that Chris noted was absent, and that was a shame. But that by itself didn't stop me from the intellectual difficulty that I suspect a lot of other people had when they looked at that form online. It was just so hard to grasp many, many things. So let me move on. I will say that I am not in favor of using land trust money, the land trust scheme or format for asking the Legislative General Assembly to open it up. I'll continue what I am in favor of, and that is if the town felt it was appropriate to tap money in that same format, similar format, the risks of opening the land trust legislation up by the General Assembly comes with risks that other people have already spoken to. But I don't get the sense that everybody in the community understands how risky it is to open up legislation like that when you've worked so hard to get it. Nevertheless, we have been successful since that time in getting enabling legislation for the affordable, I don't know exactly what it's called, but it's the 1% that's taxed and paid by renters, rent landlords on their directly to the town, the 1%. We rented for many, many years on Lewis Farm. And in fact, we paid that religiously every time. But that's essentially, the community has treated that as a volunteer tax. That's a community choice because there's no enforcement behind it. But it was passed, the enabling legislation was passed that allowed that tax to be put in place. The council should feel equally comfortable that the affordable housing matter and the volume of dollars needed in front of us now is so extraordinary that they should not shy away from putting separate dedicated legislation on the table for the General Assembly to pass and remove the land trust legislation from this discussion because it really is clouding the issue in everybody's mind. If this is a worthy effort on the part of the town to tax in this manner and with this format, and you're going to assume the risk of going to the legislature to make changes, let the change be the right one. And that's a dedicated tax defended by your own statistics, which we obviously have a lot more to do, and that will allow you, the entire community, to get behind the topic and behind the tax and the legislation without arguing the things that we're never going to get off a dead center on. So I leave you with that thought and thank you for your time.
David, thank you. Chris?
I did forget to discuss, well, actually it wasn't part of the discussion, but I would like to mention the ordinances that we've been working on, which are also part of the solution. And I'm going to also rebut Mr. Lewis here. We have to rewrite a lot of ordinances to make affordable and attainable housing more likely. And so 513 is being, I heard right now, new one 519, which is towards attainable, affordable housing, is being drafted. And why I'm mentioning these is all these ordinances can tap into funding, but what funding can it tap into? And that's the big question. The town needs to create a funding mechanism for all these various ways that you can construct affordable attainable housing, whether it's, multifamily, single family, attached, detached, all these different ways that the housing board may or may not be involved in, or through a housing authority, which there is strong support. So this survey didn't touch on any of that, of the ordinances that are being rewritten. We had discussed that very early on. And I mean, to me, if we do not rewrite these ordinances, it's a huge roadblock to making more housing available much more quickly. So we have 519 that is being worked on right now. 513 is basically going to hearing. But there are so many other ordinances that need to be worked on too. And, we can only work on a few at a time. With respect to the land trust, there's been this, I'll say the boogeyman of touching the land trust legislation and then losing it. That has been said by several people in this room. And to me, I have to say, if there's no better time to modify the land trust legislation towards affordable or attainable housing than right now. For the state, for someone to assume that the state legislature would just cut this because we wanted to change it to be more focused on not just conserving land, but conserving people, as Mark Emanuel likes to say, and I agree. I think it's very wrong-headed. It's the fear of the unknown and saying that if we do anything, it's going to be bad. We have to control our own destiny, and the legislature, through our lobbyists, told us that. He mentioned that if we do not pony up money, then we're going to probably be a lower consideration on the totem pole of funding. And so therefore, I reject the hypothesis that altering the land trust is going to cause it to go away. The land trust has no sunset provision, and just logic alone says if you have no sunset provision, this mission goes on and on unaltered. How many missions do you know that have never changed at all like this and been successful? The land trust has had its success, and I do not advocate disbanding the land trust. I advocate altering part of its mission. I think we will always want to conserve certain types of land, but right now the land trust doesn't try to really do much about taking funding and putting it towards affordable housing in any way other than their original legislation enabled them to do. So there's been no effort by the land trust to adopt or adapt to the current situation. And that, to me, is just wrong. So in conclusion, this is the best time I can think of if we want to modify land trust legislation to go to the legislature and do that. And I reject the boogeyman that we'll lose the land trust just because we tried to make it more towards people-friendly legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Council, have any follow-up on any of this?
The one thing that I would say that comes out of this, and thank you everybody for the input, is I think it was Chris's early comment that he doesn't see the strategy or the plan. And I think that's actually a very good statement. I've worked and actually drawn a number of things up. Visually, Keith's worked on it relentlessly. Everybody has. We've been to meetings upstate, et cetera. But I don't know that that's been well communicated. And even if we had a great meeting and we learned that funding won't be available for 6 months, so hold on, that's probably something that, we all walked away from very optimistic and yet had nothing in our hands, but most of you in this room probably don't know of that effort. And that's no intent. So I think the real action that I see coming out of this, because much of what the survey did affirms all of our beliefs. Much of what this survey, and I would say Chris and Alicia and the whole group have done, is to raise the whole awareness and the concern. And we need to keep pushing on that and creating the urgency. So I think I would embrace the idea of working with the housing board or having the housing board do it, or however we can figuring out how to at least have a little bit better communication to the public. And maybe it's just an update in the paper, or it's maybe just a newsletter. I don't know what it is yet, but I hear you, and with no information, you assume nothing's being done. And a little bit of information at least can alert everybody to actions and maybe even enhanced ideas. So that's the big takeaway, Chris, that I'm having, besides all of the details. And I think that's a very good point. So thank you.
My name's Doug Michelle, and I'll try to be brief so I don't bore you too much. I was on a town council when we went and got the land trust legislation. Spent some time upstate without Keith Lewis taking 6 months off from sea on his own and being up there every day talking to every legislature. We would not have had one. We're only the second public land trust in the state. After we got it, they shut the door. And if we go up there, they may very well shut the door again. So it's not the boogeyman. The land trust legislation works. Leave it alone. There's no reason to change it. If you want land transfer fees to go towards housing, that's why we have a housing board. If you feel that's the way to go, you go to the state and ask the state to allow the housing board to collect land transfer fees. I was on the housing board for the first 8 years. I was the chair for 7. And after the first year, Cindy and I had to go upstate and convince the state to allow us to have the 1% tax on the rental. And it was a fight, but they listened to us and they understood the issue, and we got it the first year. And if you wanted to do the same thing, if you thought that the transfer tax sum should go towards the housing board, you go upstate and you change the legislation. Land trust is not a housing board. That's why we have a housing board. The land trust deals with land issues. The housing board's meant for housing. You leave land trust alone. I know how the legislature works. You don't know what's going to come out of the woodwork. Don't change the legislation. That's all I want to say. You know, you don't need to change something that works. Go to a housing board that you have, which is making good progress. And if that's what you think, they should have some of the transfer tax money, then go change the legislation. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Thank you, Doug. Is there any more public comment? Is there any more public comment on the topic? Cindy?
Just like to add my comments about the land trust. I don't believe it is the position, we haven't taken a vote or anything, but I don't believe it is the position of the housing board that we are looking to the land trust to change their legislation. I think that, you know, again, speaking to Sven's comment of the need to communicate more fully is important. We're all volunteers on these boards, and often you're just focused on the job at hand. You don't spend a lot of time with PR. But to speak to the land trust, it's easy for us to stand here and say, yes, the land trust should be reorganized. But I think that the land trust provided an enormous service to this community. If you think back to the 80s and the developmental pressure that was on this town, if the land trust had not been put in place, we would be looking at a very, very different landscape out there. So I think the land trust has done a marvelous thing for the town. In addition, it's very easy for us to think, oh my gosh, the land trust has so much money. Look at the revenues that they're getting. Well, the last 2 years, the revenues have been pretty special, to be sure. But think back to 2009, 2010, 2011. There were some months when the land trust was making like $30. Their revenues rise and fall with the real estate market. And as someone who's been in the real estate market for 4 decades, some years it's great, and some years you're looking at nothing. So their revenues are averaged over decades, and they have, I'm sure, I don't know the details, but they have debt service, long-term debt service that they need to save their money to be able to be responsible about their debt service. I'm sure that they have other parcels of land that they still want to acquire. So I don't think we should be spending land trust revenues. Their funds go up and down with the vagaries of the larger market. And I think they've done a great job over the last few decades. The housing situation is critical, it's important, but we are finding other revenues to deal with that.
Thank you, Cindy. Chris, one more, and then we'll move on. We have 20 items.
It is, no one has ever said the land trust is the cure to affordable or attainable housing. If you look at the numbers, it is, as Cindy said, it's not sufficient, but there is strong support that the unending conservancy of land is causing a problem. And, you can't, when Doug and Cindy talked, and David, they all talked in the past tense of the good things that the land trust has done. And no one in this room, I doubt, would say that's not correct. But that's in the past. Mission is mostly accomplished. There is still somewhat of a mission to go forward. It should be modified and morphed into something that is more, I would say, sustainable. Right now, there is no discussion about that at all. And so to me, that is the problem. Most people that are supporting the land trust are talking about the great things it's done in the past. We are now in the future. We're in a different place. And as I said earlier, we have to modify and change with the times, not just be stuck in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. So Doug, go ahead.
Talking about the past is knowing where you've come from, knowing the problems that this town went through, and knowing how you got out of them and how to prepare for them in the future. Right, just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it should continue, but it should continue. Because a lot of people don't know, if it wasn't for certain things the town did, the Great Salt Pond, the whole commercial area would be ringed by condominiums and motels 35 feet high, every square foot of shoreline. Smuggler's Cove, Sylvican, every one of those properties was slated for 35-foot condos. So without the actions the town did. So you want to talk about the town did in the past? Yeah, that's because some people know how things got accomplished and they know the problems that we went through. So doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it, and it doesn't, you know. I have the history. I know what happened in the past. I know what happened last year, and I have an idea what's going to happen in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We have actionable items that people have brought up. I'm wondering if the clerk can compile those moving forward, about, having another gathering about the items Mary Lutz brought up, and the Attainable Housing Board, just getting together and needs. I'm not saying, we should have another meeting, not this summer maybe, or not soon, but like just to wrap everything up and try to come up with what Mary Lutz has mentioned and what the Affordable Housing Board. So I know we've discussed, but I'm just wondering if the clerk could put those in the points for us, for review. Good, thanks. That's the word I was looking for, strategy. It's a strategy moving forward. Thank you, Sven.
Jen, can you add into that menu, possibly get in our lobbyist here to educate us on just what they're pursuing?
That's going to actually be coming up on the agenda tonight, this evening for this legislative season.
The last thing I want to say is, every time we get into discussions regarding affordable and attainable housing, everyone in attendance is wearing a bleach white hat. We're all on the same page on what we hope will come to fruition. It's how to get there. Chris can hug a tree with the best of them, just like me. She's not anti-conservation. So everybody is doing their best. And boy, if you need any better examples, I rode their coattails for some half a dozen years with Cindy and Doug on that housing board. No one worked harder than those two did. Everybody is trying their best. We just have to stay the course and keep our fingers tightly crossed and do as much as we can. And I think you have the people at this table who will hopefully bring that to fruition.
Thank you, Mark. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on a motor vehicles for hire commission recommendation to.
This is just an information thing. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm Martha Ball. I chaired the zoning board during the 80s. And sometimes I look around and I think people like Doug Michelle and me forget how long ago the 80s were because we don't like to do the math. But I can say with absolute certainty that it sounded like hyperbole, these condos ringing Great Salt Pond. It was all very real. I think a lot of people aren't aware because they weren't here of what happened, what got stopped, what got stalled. I've always said the zoning, the only things you see are the losses. You don't see everything we won and everything that didn't happen. And that's really terribly important that people realize that it wasn't just by magic. And I also would say, ratcheting that up, I'm afraid our public awareness has become even less. When Mark spoke about the lobbyists and when we spoke with them, I thought, my gosh, does no one know this? Have we not been able to communicate this? And I fear we haven't.
Martha, we have a taxi item next. Do you want to stay? We want you back, but next item on the agenda is discuss and act on motor vehicles for hire commission recommendation to add a temporary fuels charge to the taxi rate.
And Andre, I will recuse myself too as a taxi license holder.
Thank you, Mark. On June 17th, we received a memo from the Commission of Motor Vehicles for Hire, met on June 16th, in which they voted to make the following request: to recommend that the town council institute a temporary fuel charge of $1 to the taxi rate for each trip, with reevaluation of the need by the Motor Vehicles for Hire Commission in October. They're asking to add this to the July 5th agenda. Thank you for your consideration. Is there anybody from the taxi commission here, or anybody to speak for the taxi commission this evening? Okay. Do council have any comments?
Yes, I think we all shudder every time we go to the pump, and we all sort of look at, I don't know, depending on your truck, how much you have and how much it costs. But I guess I wish they were here, because it just seems strange to me to have $1 as a number, because I'm not sure where that dollar comes from. And there was an increase, as I think everybody knows, but if you don't know, there was an increase in the taxi rates this year. And I guess going through October, I don't quite know where that goes, because taxi rates have gone up and down in the last, fuel has gone up and down and continues to go down. Matter of fact, I just saw a report that Rhode Island was 20 cents lower on average in the last 20 days. So it's 20 cents, 20 days. But I wish there was more discussion around this dollar and through October, because that just seems a fair amount in a long period of time. And October is when there's no more, there are very few taxi cab rides after October.
Thank you, Sven. Keith, do you have any opinion on that? Do you want to continue until the 20th? With the request that somebody should come. I'd be comfortable with that.
Right. That and the math. I mean, it's how do you get there? So yes, I'd like to.
Make a motion, we continue item number 5 to, it is the 20th. Our next meeting is the 20th, correct? Okay, so the July 20th meeting. Just wonder if clerk could send a note to the taxi commission. Okay. Well, just let them know that we'd like to, just let them know that we'd like them to be here. Thank you.
Second.
Motion made second. Keith, I'm in favor. Sven, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 6 is the update from the San P Meadow Subcommittee regarding progress on the development of the San P Meadow property. Martha, okay.
So I just.
Hold on a minute.
Oh,
Hold on
sorry.
a minute. Are you going to give that update?
I was going to give that up.
All right, I was just going to ask if we do have we do have members of the town council on the subcommittee. They are Sven and Mark, so I'm going to let them give the update.
We'll do this quickly. Just for everybody's knowledge, San P Meadow is in essence what it was referred to as Overlook, and San P Meadow, as Martha pointed out, it's actually on the deed, so that's why the name of the project. Mark and I are representatives of the town council. Wendy Crawford and Barbara McMullen are representatives of the land trust. We sort of meet just trying to figure things out and how to move the ball forward, I guess is a word. There's no voting on that subcommittee. We bring any decisions back to the council or to the land trust respectively, and decisions, approvals are made by those two bodies, the council and the land trust. Joining in with the subcommittee has been 2 staff members, which have been great. The facilities director, Tom Reesum, and the harbor master, Kate McConnell, and they've obviously added a lot of specificity and ability to the dialogue. The work that is currently moving forward and is being funded by the land trust are 2 studies. One is a bathymetric study. Bathymetric is depth of water and what's in the water across the front of Sanpete Meadow, Ball O'Brien, and K&H. So there's going to be a full bathymetric study figuring out what is the water depths and actual issues or controls within that body of water. They are also doing a wetland study across all three bodies. And so the goal would be to figure out truly where can you put a dock? And if you start with where the dock is, then you can sort of work backwards from there versus, you know, figuring out where you want to put the house and the dock is somewhere else, right? So there was dialogue as to starting with the water, starting then with the wetlands. There are a lot of wetlands in there. As part of, just to remind everybody, as part of the agreement, the town has 1.75 acres of developable land on Sanpete Meadow. Obviously, there's a lot of potentially developable land on Ball O'Brien. So those two studies, the Land Trust reported would be back in August and mid-September. The other new piece of info, and so those are being funded by the Land Trust, and I think those are good studies. If anybody has questions, we should discuss those. The third piece of information, which is relatively new, I asked very specifically, and I will make sure everybody has copies because I know the facilities director does, et cetera. I asked our lobbyist, the May 4th group, to help us with timing for any kind of infrastructure, federal, state funding. And how do we work backwards from that funding? So for example, if dollars are being released by the state or by our senators or by the federal government, and that's going to be, I'm making it up, in April, how do you work backwards to what we need to be doing today so that we can be prepared for those applications? In their opinion, and I will circulate the memo the town manager has as well, in their opinion, we need to have sort of rough costings and even a sketch of the concept in October, which is incredibly quickly. And so we then need as a group to figure out, can you do that? How do you do that? What does that truly mean? What are the details of that? And who can do that? And so it's a very helpful timeline from the May 4th group, just bringing reality to if we want to get dollars from the federal government or the state in this coming year, in this legislative year, what do we need to be ready to deliver? They also identified tons of other comments, but most of that was qualitative or, you know, strategic. What can the community do? What do the taxpayers gain, et cetera? How many people, et cetera? But the really big hurdle that was seen in the timeline was this urgency, and the urgency to have a sketch of something and to have some rough cost estimates. And those cost estimates can be based on sort of a square footage. I know the facilities director has already been looking at that conceptually. And so we're going back to the May 4th group and asking, how rough are these? Like, so if the sketch that goes before you in October is different than actual architectural plans, you know, what is the plus and minus on that? So that's sort of the big update on Sanpete Meadow that I can give. And we can answer any questions.
Council have any questions?
Now, I'm just going to highlight the cooperation and the collaboration with the Block Island Land Trust, taking care of the funding for all of these studies so we can move along. We're not breaking the 4-minute mile, but we're certainly not at a snail's pace here because we know of some concerns that we have to address quickly in order to hopefully get some money for this project.
Thank you, Mark. Public, good. Thank you. Item number 7 is to discuss the Cannabis Act on a resolution to conduct a voter referendum on the November 28th, 2022 ballot regarding the cannabis-related licenses for cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and sale of adult recreational use cannabis be issued in New Shoreham. We have a resolution. I think in a nutshell, what we're looking to do is, obviously the legislature has passed, they've legalized marijuana in the state. And, we are going to put this before the voters and, in the fall to see if the voters would like to have a dispensary or whatever you have on Block Island. So that decision will be made by the voters. I'll read the resolution. It's a New Salem Town Council resolution, legalization of adult recreational use of marijuana. Whereas House Bill 7593 AA and Senate Bill 2430 AAA, known as the Rhode Island Cannabis Act, were approved by the Rhode Island General Assembly in the May 24th, 22. And whereas Governor Dan McKee signed the Rhode Island Cannabis Act into law on May 25th, 2022. Whereas the Rhode Island Cannabis Act legalizes recreational marijuana for adults 20 years of age or older, 21 years of age or older, and whereas if Rhode Island legalizes recreational marijuana, our cities and towns will bear most of the direct burden to pay for and deal with the implementation and public consequences. Now therefore be it resolved that the town of New Salem hereby memorializes the General Assembly's authorization in 2128.11-15A of Rhode Island General Laws that any city or town council with the approval of the qualified voters, electors, by resolution of the city or town council, to be printed on the ballot in an election held on or before November 28, 2022. Following question, quote, shall new cannabis-related licenses for businesses involved in the cultivation, manufacture, laboratory testing, and for the retail sale of adult recreational use cannabis be issued in the city or town? Further, it be resolved, the New Salem Town Council, upon the adoption of a resolution by the city or town council pursuant to the provisions of 2128.11-15A, will forward a copy of the resolution to the Department of Business Regulation, Office of Cannabis Regulation, to ensure that no new cannabis-related licenses are issued unless and until the electors of the city or town vote to approve the issuance of the new cannabis-related licenses within the city or town. Further, it be resolved, if the town of New Salem voters authorize new cannabis-related licenses for businesses involved in the cultivation, manufacture, laboratory testing, and for the retail sale of adult recreational use cannabis, the Rhode Island Cannabis Act enables cities and towns to adopt ordinances that ban or impose restriction on the smoking or vaporizing of marijuana in public places. That is our resolution. Does anybody have any comment on the council? Public?
I just have a question. My
Sorry,
understanding.
Social.
Oh, sorry.
No, go
Sasha.
ahead.
I apologize.
Go ahead.
So my understand, and just please correct me if I'm wrong, because I may be wrong. I thought the law that they passed was basically on a town is eligible for a cannabis dispensary unless the town votes by referendum not to have it. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, but our attorney is in the room.
Okay, so this is, I'm just, I get a little confused about whether we're gonna have whether we're having a yes vote means, means I'm okay with having a dispensary and a no vote is no, or whether the question is, yeah. You know what I mean? Right. Right. And if we did not put this before the voters, we would not have the opportunity to not have one. Right? Okay, gotcha, thank you. A lot of negatives in those sentences, but I just thought it was important to make clear. Yeah.
Do you want to opt out? Say, yes, I want to opt out.
Then
we won't.
yes,
have it.
right.
If you say no, then we will allow. So everyone's mind is more opted in instead of.
Well, you're sort of opting in no matter what, unless you say we're opting out.
Correct.
And I think
Right.
we just have to make sure it's really
But
clear.
the opt-out vote may not be no, it may be yes.
Oh, it's a yes.
You're right.
So I think as we keep going with this, I think we really need
Yeah.
to be clear.
And test
Right.
it.
Right.
Is this standard state?
This legislation, just so you know, resolution we got from the League of Cities and Towns.
Right. I mean, everybody's sort of playing with the same language.
Sure,
I just want to make sure.
And what we're hearing, most of the communities are presenting it to the voters, at least in Narragansett, North Kingston, South. Will be presenting it to the voters. It is that.
I'm good with it.
I'm in favor of sending it to the voters. I'm not in favor of dispensary out here, and keep in mind, I grew up in the 70s.
Nick, could you just clarify that?
You can't remember what he's voting on.
Because of the size of our town, it's based on the population that this town would be allowed. If we voted, if the voters voted to approve of this, we would be allowed a permit for one dispensary. Okay, thank you.
Who decides?
Who decides who gets it?
You have to do a zoning.
Yeah, they- they allow kind of four dispensaries. CVI, to apply to CVI. Which is like-
Nick, I'm sorry. Could you step up to the microphone so the public can hear you? Appreciate it.
So how this is broken up by the legislation, the 125 page, it is. The 125 page legislation, I might add, is each city and town in Rhode Island is broken up into groups, 1 through 6. New Shoreham finds itself in a group of a number of cities and towns, and if memory serves me correctly, the largest number of cities and towns. Now, that's not to say it's not likely that you could have a dispensary here. It's fully possible. But you're in the largest group that is eligible to have that dispensary. I don't know if that answers your
And-
question. Go ahead.
And it, from within that, within each of the 6 groups, 4 licenses will be issued. Is that what I?
That's my understanding, Marianne.
Okay.
And the island zone 6, Barrington, Bristol.
So you're-
So we're in zone 6, and Nick is right, we're in zone 6. And zone 6 is made up of Barrington, Bristol, Jamestown, Little Compton, Middletown, New Shoreham, Portsmouth, Tiverton, Warren, East Providence, Newport, and Pawtucket. Yeah, and, you know, and keep in mind, there's stuff in the legislation that states that establishments cannot be located within 500 feet of a school, and the town can also do further restriction by ordinance if we choose to. If the legislation, if the vote by the voters approves, allows us to have dispensaries.
And I know there was a question as to where this would be. Assuming it were to be in New Shoreham in Block Island, it would still be subject to your zoning regulations that you have. And one of the biggest things that's being dealt with statewide is these locations cannot be within 500 feet of a school. That, in conjunction with your zoning regulations, will regulate where exactly this is to go on the island.
Hang on a second. I'll just let him finish.
Good question. I'm assuming that's a daycare. That's a great question. It would be dictated in the ordinance. That's a question I'm happy to report back to the council on.
500 feet is 18 acres.
I'll
Thank
defer to
you.
you and your expertise.
I know this from the
I
deer.
know you do.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you. Well, my name's Nick Solitro. I'm one of the solicitors.
Hang on a second. Do you want to give me? We can slide them all down. We have. We
Wait a
can-
minute, wait a minute, you've got 4. What the? You've got 2 on. Yeah, but Mark has 1, so it's 2. Keith and I've got 1. God.
Is the peanut gallery ready? Is the peanut gallery ready? Where I'm gonna make a motion. I will make a motion to approve. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to conduct a voter referendum on the November 8th, 2022 ballot regarding the cannabis-related licenses for cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and sale of adult recreational use cannabis be issued in New Shoreham.
I second with great explanation of what we're actually voting for.
What isn't going to happen, you know that, you know what happens on referendum items in this town. People don't read them. We had more people vote in favor, I'm going to say it again. We had more people who voted that the charter should be amended to say everyone should go to financial town meeting than actually showed up at financial town meeting.
Thank you, Martha. I was actually waiting for that. Appreciate it.
Well, hey, somebody's got to keep these issues alive.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Keith?
Yes.
Martha?
No, I'm not voting for it.
Martha's not in favor.
I don't like the way it's worded.
I'm in favor.
Aye.
In March. Motion will carry 4-0. 4-1. Sorry, Martha.
Yeah, it's
Attorney Horatio.
backwards wording.
Okay.
Item number 8 is to review the schematics of the Thomas Property Development Plat 8, Lot 218. Tom Rism? Tom Rism's here from Building Department to help us out with that this evening. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, hear me okay? So you should all have in your packet a site plan and 2 building packages. One is for a project called a Custom Cape, and the other is for our titled Ranch Duplex, and then a single page, which is a site plan. As you all know, this is the Thomas property. For those in the public that may not, this is the property across from the school that was made available to the town for advancement of employee housing. The first project on the property beside the existing Thomas house was a single-family home, which is currently being used by the town manager. And then there was an additional 4 residences added as accessory dwellings. The first, we have decided to do this project in concert with development of the Coast Guard Station motor pool, which in discussions with Matt Moynihan, town manager, myself, Jim Jeremiah, and Connecticut Valley Homes, we feel that we can develop the property up at the Thomas property similar to that in the area, Mike Shea's house and similar properties, which would be more for a family-oriented dwellings, and then develop the Coast Guard properties, specifically the motor pool, which is right now just an open barrack, into smaller rooms with common bathrooms, common areas, common kitchen for the more transient people that we would hire. So the plan that Matt had in effect, and of course, the new police chief will have his own plan, but that was to bring over officers for 3, 4, or 5 nights in a row, and then they would go back to their families on the mainland. And we felt it was best to facilitate that through more of a rooming house environment, and then you develop the Thomas property for families. And because of that, we chose to take of the 4 dwellings we can add to that lot, and they would be secondary or accessory dwellings, and using the town manager's house as the principal structure, which the others have to be subordinate to, and there's other zoning restrictions that come into play. We would do that as 3 2-bedroom units and 1 1-bedroom unit. The project at the Thomas property would be broken into 2 phases. One, which would enjoy funding we have in hand right now, would be to raise the Thomas property, but preserve the foundation and build on that a 1.5-story cape, be 30 feet by 53 feet, basically. It's in your plans. And that would have 2 2-bedroom units in it. with stairs to the bedroom upstairs, a downstairs bedroom, and private access to half of the basement. So we would promote that for town employees, for the police department, then for teachers and other such town employees, than any other town employees as the memorandum of agreement stipulates for that property. Phase 2 would be a one-story, they called it the ranch duplex, would be actually just one story with an 812 roof slope, be basically along the north line from the garage back. We would preserve the garage for that purpose. And this building would basically form the third leg of a U, starting with the town manager's house, then the Thomas house, then the garage, and then this phase 2 building. And we would develop that now as a single plan, but we wouldn't execute the plan until we were able to obtain funding for that. Ideally, the timing works out in May of 23. So if we move forward as we would like, we would begin we'd turn Connecticut Valley Homes into building phase 1, which would arrive here in the late winter of 23. And about that time, we would get the funding to start phase 2, which would arrive in the early winter of 23 for construction in 24 and hopefully available by the season in 2024. The 2-bedroom, the 2-bedroom units would be, they would each have 2 bedrooms, of course, 2 full baths, kitchen, living, dining, and we could do a basement in the new building, but if cost was thin, we could do a slab on grade too, and the only storage would be in the attic. Let me see what else I got in my notes. Phase 2, as I said, would be a 1-bedroom, 1 1-bedroom and 1 2-bedroom, similar as above with the kitchen, bath, and living. So I think what the overall plan addresses the scheme that we have put together for family housing for the type of candidates that the police are trying to obtain or attain with year-round police officers. There will be, the plan is to have year-round use of those buildings, no seasonal use. Right now, there's some of the CSOs are in there, and we don't think that's an effective use of that property. So we would move them over to, ideally, would move them over to the Coast Guard motor pool and bring in families. If the police officer and their spouse, there you go, thank you. The police officer and their spouse and maybe a kid would use the 2 bedrooms, and then we had a single person. Typical of the ones that are the police officers that are living above Seaside right now would be able to take advantage of that property. So we put a lot of thought into whether we want 2 2s and 2 1s or 4 2s, and we think for the near future and the foreseeable future, 3 2-bedrooms and 1 1-bedroom there would be perfect. And then I believe, and I'll check this for you, but I think in the 24 capital budget is development of the motor pool, which would coincide with construction of the phase 2 building. That's what I got.
Thank you, Tom. Council have any questions, comments?
Yeah. Tom, the Thomas property will always prioritize police officers, correct?
The memorandum of agreement says that.
Okay. And the other question is this parcel in total maxed out after we complete this proposal?
In the current 513 parameters, yes. We don't really need 1,200 feet for the 2-bedroom unit. And we aren't going there. They're about 1,100 feet, and the 1-bedroom is about 900 feet, 8, 9. So we're not approaching the max, but we can only go to 1,200. So we're under the max, but only by hundreds of feet, not much.
It just seems that the project right next door, Seawind, seems to be so much more condensed and uses so much more square footage. Has there been any comparison on just what was developed there?
I haven't done a side-by-side, but Connecticut Valley Homes built this to be the most economical by box. I can't tell you if Seawinds was stick-built or modular. I think it was stick-built.
I would just like to see this property maxed out. See
It
when
it
you
is
got away with it.
because
Why
a
the town?
513 can only be 1,200 feet right now. Until that changes, we have to stick within that. So our units are at 1,200 feet. And I think it's prudent to have one bedroom unit and not none. You could probably parlay the little bits and pieces to make up another one bedroom unit, but we can only have 4. So you have to give up a 2 to have another one.
And is it cost that prohibits us from putting 2 stories with affordable housing?
An accessory dwelling unit can only be 25 feet high. A primary can be 32.
I just have a budget question. So we can do 2 2-bedrooms in this in the Cape
You know what?
with the money that we have
On the existing foundation.
on the existing foundation.
Yes.
With the money from the bond that was done when we did the town manager.
Yes, and while I say the word yes, I don't know what the price of lumber will be, and I don't know what the price of concrete
Right.
will be.
But,
It'll be close.
okay, what is that number?
Well, Connecticut Valley delivers you a box assembled, married, as they call it, that has the plumbing, wiring, sheet rock on the inside, and exterior sheathing, but not exterior siding, delivered. Whereas another modular shell, or sorry, prefab shell would just be the wall and the studs, and there's a
Yeah,
lot more afterwork. They're coming in at Scott Anderson, who's our rep at Connecticut Valley Homes, thought between 4 and 450 a foot.
Gotcha.
Whereas on Block Island right now, I'm sure there's not too many people will tell me, will agree with that, it's less than 600 a foot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then phase 2 would be the 1 bedroom, 1 2-bedroom in that ranch style place.
Yes.
So just sort of following up a little bit on Mark's question, does it make sense to, maybe it already is, but to max out the height of that so that in case we wanted to, we could put, say, a 1-bedroom upstairs in that ranch building?
Well, right now, the ranch is 4 boxes. If you go any higher, you're going to bring in more boxes.
But the Cape is 2-story. The ranch is, it's a 2-story ranch?
No, the ranch is 1 story with the roof folded down. Once
Right.
they assemble it, they erect the roof and
Right.
and it's up. The other one is a
Is it
story and a
2 story?
half.
Right.
The bottom floor is, I'm going to say 6 boxes, and the second floor is 2 boxes running along the ridge, and then the roof sits on those. So
Right.
it's not a full 2-story.
Right. I guess what I'm at, and what I'm saying is, you know, are we doing our best to make sure that in 10 years we don't say, geez, we shouldn't have, you know, we should have built out to the absolute height that we could have on that ranch so we could put another 1-bedroom upstairs.
It's possible. You can always pop out a dorm.
I mean, it just seems to me if we're, you know, if we're gonna be asking for money for it, maxing out the height on that building so that even if we're not gonna put a unit there, we have the ability to, if we wanted to in the future with an exterior staircase. I mean, you know, I mean, it's just
You're gonna have
an opportunity for another unit.
Yep. No, that's, you could
And
put
then,
second floor on.
and
later.
then we would also be asking for money in phase 2 to do a motor pool reconstruction.
Motor pool is in the capital plan, the 6-year capital plan.
Okay, gotcha.
We don't have, that's not funded yet, is it?
No, of course
No,
not.
yeah. But it will be in the capital plan for next financial.
If it's for 24,
Yeah.
yes.
Next year. Perfect, thanks.
One question, I just want to make sure, in this first step, when we're building the Cape, do you say you're going to do the groundwork and all the foundations, et cetera, for phase 2?
No.
Or you didn't say that?
No, there'll be some of the site plan work.
So just
We'll bring in-
site plan.
We'll bring in the second septic, the second water source, just to stub them out on the property.
Good, so that you're gaining the most efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, but not any road work or gravel driveways? or-
No, I mean,
Thank you.
we'll be lucky if we make it with the money we have. So
Yeah,
we're not
yeah,
throwing
no,
that
that's
ahead.
why, that's where I was going. is
Right,
Do what we do right.
Good.
So can I ask, what is the price of this building, the anticipated cost? And then how much do we have in the bank? Not square footage, the actual out the door.
And thanks, Bill. We don't have an estimate from Connecticut Valley Homes now, but at 4 to 450 a foot, plus when they brought the services to the town manager's house, some of that was already stubbed out, so we have minimum utility trenching to do and that sort of thing. He believes we could put these in place minus the demolition and some other things, but Scott Anderson believes we can do it for under 8, and we have just under 8. Yeah. No, just stays one. Okay.
Any other public comments? Thank you, Tom. Appreciate that input. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the renewal of Carol Payne's mobile food establishment permit. Council, have any questions on Carol Payne's?
Question, and maybe Lily's not here, but I did talk to her before. This is sort of now in the new world of what we can really impact or talk about. Because so much of the MFEs, Andre, you know better than anybody, so much of the MFEs are sort of now up to state level. So is this about the hours and just the location only, right?
Thank you, Sven.
That's really a question.
I believe this is to renew her license, but as I'm asked to comment on this, I will let everybody know that I did receive an opinion from the Ethics Commission about voting on another licensee's MFE, and given that she's so far away from me and my business, that they had absolutely no problem with that. So this is why I can vote on this, being somebody in the same business that I have. I believe this is to renew her permit to operate with the town for the
Whereas
next
the
year.
licensing state is just around.
The license is done in upstate, and Carol, this is her year. We're on a calendar year for some reason, whereas Kelly and I, the Farmstead and myself, we get renewed in January, I believe. And Carol, when she got up and running with her initial permit with the state, it was in July. So her state license and her permit, I believe, I mean, there's no one from that business here. It's just, it's paperwork. It's, it's.
But versus when, from much of the other, so basically for everybody, the whole mobile food establishment licensing renewal, that they said a lot more at the state level. We have a different scope of what we can affect. And so this is really, I think this is about location.
It's her permit to operate within the town. And the town controls the locations and the time. I believe the council sets the locations for these licenses in December. But again, like I said, Kelly and I's permits are up for the state in January. Hers is up in July. So.
Isn't number one a prerequisite for getting this license that you're a year-round resident?
I can actually speak to that because these licenses were under the original Hawkers licenses. And then they were removed from Hawkers when the state took over. So there's no year-round residency requirement for the state permit. Your Hawkers licenses still do say that you gotta be a year-round resident, and I believe whoever's name is on the permit has to be operating in there 50 or 75% of the time. I believe that was changed. But that doesn't apply to MFE licenses. It used to, but it doesn't anymore because the state took over.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to, well, I was gonna do it after a second. I'll make a motion to act on the renewal of Carol Payne's mobile food establishment permit. Seconded by Sven. All those in favor, Mark?
Aye.
Sven? Martha?
Aye.
Keith? Motion carries 5-0.
Hey, before you go on, I hope everybody, I'm going back to the item before, this is
Go ahead.
only information. There's the consent order that was signed that set up the whole process for the Thomas House for the rental. I would urge everybody to read it if you haven't already. If you have any questions, ask Melanie McGinnis, who's the most well-versed in it. This is the item that came up that we had the court case about a few years ago. And I think if everybody had understood it from the beginning, we probably wouldn't ever have had it. So I just urge everybody to be well-versed in this,
Thank you, Martha.
because I don't want to be in the audience 10 years from now going, didn't you people read that?
Item number 10 is to discuss and act on the contract for the town planner. Mary Ann?
So before you this evening is a contract for our town planner, Allison Ring. We're asking for a 2-year contract. Allison has been with us since July 1st, 2022. So this would bring her into the 9th year with the town. I'm pleased with her performance and the services she's provided. She's been very helpful with both planning, zoning, historical district, and now she's also taken on Sea Level Rise Committee also. So I'm recommending that the council approves this contract for 2 years.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Council, have any questions on the document before you?
The only question is this all within budget
Yes, it is.
for this, for the remainder of the year and time?
For the remainder of the year and also for next year, and also what you'll be working on this coming year is also the update of the hazard mitigation plan, which we received, I think, $8,500, which can go through for her salary, to pay her for those hours.
The remainder of the year is all but 11 days, isn't it?
I wasn't this year. Thank you, Martha. I was thinking about.
I thought
How many
I might be missing something. I've been known to
I
happen
don't care about
before.
11 days.
I'll make a motion to approve the contract for the town planner.
Second.
Seconded by Sven. Public comment? All those in favor, Keith? Martha?
Aye.
I'm in favor. Sven? Mark? Motion will carry 5-0. Item number 11 is to discuss and act on a letter of intent for the Rhode Island Municipal Matching Grant Fund for multipurpose community facility projects regarding renovations to the Block Island Medical Center. Mary Ann, you want to take the lead on that?
Sure. What was included in the governor's budget was 46.7 million, about $47 million for grant matching state grant money for communities to for community centers. So what they requested is we found out back on June 23rd what the parameters were going to be for that, which included someone from the town attending what they call office hours with the state pandemic recovery. There was a deadline for June 6th of 2022 to submit letter of intent. The letter of intent does not commit anything at this point on the town's behalf. You just submit the letter of intent about the project. They will be reviewed by a state agency and we'll get a letter back notifying us whether or not they would request us to put in a full plan. So at this point, we don't know if we're going to have that opportunity. I did submit 2 requests. One we'll discuss in executive session. And this one here, the other one that I put in is for the community, the medical center, because I really think that fits it. We will hear on July 20th whether or not we'll be allowed to submit a full proposal. Drafts are due by the end of August. At this point, the approval will be, has not yet, the date has not been determined. So at this point, we just submit a letter of intent and let's see what happens over the next, the 20th is a week from Wednesday, in the next 10 days.
Council have any comments, questions, concerns?
And Marianne, if I read this all right, there's some matching elements to it, but we don't know what they are.
We don't
So-
know any of the
So we'll
matching elements.
discuss that once we see whether the pond moves forward.
I think the matching elements will be determined on what is submitted to the state.
So, and before we commit to anything, we'll have all that discussion. and
Yeah,
approval.
once we are asked to submit a full thing. plan.
If we're asked.
If we're asked, and hopefully they'll have that information at that point, they being the state.
Public comment? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the amended New Harbor Vision Plan proposal for GM2 resulting in an initial traffic study. Marianne, you want to take the lead on that one also?
So if the council members, some council meeting ago, a couple of council meetings ago, we had a discussion about the New Harbor plan, the $80,000 that was budgeted in the capital budget. And what myself, the town planner, and also the consultant took away was the need for a traffic study. So what we're doing in the first step of the project, or what we're proposing doing, is just doing that, doing just the traffic study. The funding of that will come out of, obviously, the $80,000. And obviously, this is 15,960, so let's round it up to 16,000. The remaining 64,000, if the council chooses, based on what we find in the traffic study, to take next steps, and maybe the next steps will be determined based on what the traffic study is. That's what we would be doing. So I know you've seen a couple of proposals before you. The original was 80,000. We're down to the 15,960, which will be taken out of 80,000 to do just that, the traffic study.
Well, is that something that can be affected this summer? Is that something that can be done this summer?
That's what the plan is. We talked to them about that strategy, and they also have people slated if the council approves.
It's one weekend, I think they're gonna.
Marianne, dumb it down for me and someone else who might have this question. Is the 16 grand coming out of that already designated 80 grand?
Correct.
So
But
we're not increasing.
no, we're not. And keep in mind, you didn't approve the 80,000.
Right.
So what you're, before you're here, is strictly approving the 15,960 of the 80,000.
And they feel that this is much needed with all the other traffic studies that might be gathering dust.
It's based
all
on the
over.
feedback we got from the council that night. That's what I heard. It's not just traffic. When we talk traffic, we're talking vehicles, we're talking pedestrian, we're talking bicycles and things like that. And in light of what I've seen this summer as it relates to bicycles and pedestrian, I think it's good.
Mhm.
I actually, without belaboring, I think we had a very good discussion last time. And actually, Andre brought up some points about, we don't have to worry about the look and some of the feel. And it was very sort of fluffy, I thought. And he pointed that out. And I think this is a much better approach. So let's figure out from a congestion traffic point of view, and then figure out what we really need to do. I think most of us know it's a problem of parking, or it's a problem of this or that, but let's get the facts on the table. So that was helpful. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Any other comments from council? Molly? I believe they're gonna come out for a weekend
They're coming
this
out
summer,
this summer.
this summer,
So
August. Sarah?
Hi. Hi, everyone. Sarah Bacon. To that traffic study point, I just wanted to remind you guys that there is a traffic study that Respects BI had commissioned by a national mobility consultant, which had a number of preliminary conclusions, which might be helpful in informing whatever this additional study is. So I hope you'll take a look. And if I might, that traffic study that we commissioned was to address safety on the roadways of all users. To that end, I'm wondering 20 days out from the expiration of the consent agreement between the moped operators and town. There's a lot of curiosity in the community about what is planned. I know closed door sessions have been going on a long time. And I know there's discussion of holding a public forum on mopeds. Since this date is fast approaching, I wanted to ask you all when that public forum will be held, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I believe we scheduled a public forum, yeah? So I can tell you, we have a session, we have a closed session agenda item at the end of our, and if we can announce anything at the end of that, that wouldn't be detrimental to any strategies or what have you, we'll be happy to do that, but that's where we're at right now.
So I just want to make a formal request for a moment for public discussion of what's going to happen moving forward, since it is a seminal summer in that regard. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Just want to reinforce what Sarah said. We've made that promise, that commitment to have a public forum. And I think in our closed session item, I think we'll get out the calendar and come up with that date.
Thank you, Mark. I make a
I
motion.
don't think you voted on that. Jen doesn't have a vote on.
We're gonna vote on the
Okay.
traffic study right now. Thank you. Make a motion to approve the amended New Harbor Vision Plan proposal for GM2 resulting in an initial traffic study.
Of not to exceed 15,600 or whatever the number was. 15,960.
Not to exceed the amount of $15,960.
Second.
Seconded by Sven. All those in favor, Mark? Sven?
Aye.
Martha?
Aye.
And Keith? I'm in favor. I'll give you $15,000. I'll vote for this, but I do believe we have staff on duty on our payroll, like the police and whatnot, that could actually do this study for us, but I will vote for it. Motion will carry.
I think they probably could if they didn't have lots of other stuff to do,
Right. I think we would
like
have-
downtown.
There is that,
like-
but. Motion will carry 5
Okay,
to
I'm moving
nothing.
to this side.
Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the contract between the Rhode Island Council 94, AFS CME, AFL-CIO, Local 2855, New Shore Employees Association, and the Town of New Shore and New Shore School Committee, July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. Marion, want to take the?
Sure. So what's before you is the contract for what I'll call is Council 94, which represents a number of school employees and town employees, also all town employees with the exception of the police department staff and those department heads that are not included in the union, which include myself, Charlene.
Can you boost your mic a little bit?
Oh, I'm sorry. How's that? Is that better? Yeah, it's on. Yeah, it's on. Closer. So I like when I'm on that side. So what's before you, so what's before you this evening is the Council 94 contract. This union contract includes all town employees with the exception of police officers and the police chief, myself, Charlene, Kristen, Millie, and one more. I think that's it, Kristen, Millie, and Amy. I'm sorry, I knew there was one more, Amy. And also, which is included in your packet is the fiscal note. Quickly, this is a 3-year contract. The first and second year is a salary increase of 2.5, as well as a step increase for all folks. Health insurance premium co-share increases from 9.6 to 10. Comprehensive study of wages is included in the contract to be completed by June 30th, 2024. Eliminated a comp time, a language regarding the administration of sick time, and evaluation subcommittee to put together the evaluation tool for employees. And in year three, there's a wage reopener based on results of the comprehensive wage evaluation. And as you see, also is included the, as required under Rhode Island general laws, the costs associated with what they call a fiscal impact. In year 2023, this includes not only town, but also school members. So this is comprehensive. And also it includes in 2024, 157.25, and in 2024, 104,657. And that's it. We had some great negotiations with the Council 94. I thank them for their time and effort and in negotiating this contract. The Council 94 ratified this on June 15th. So now it's before the council for approval.
Comments from the council? Good.
Okay. So I'm interested in the comprehensive personnel study. One that occurred to me is so often these studies are comparing whatever person at a certain level on Block Island and a person at a certain level in Cranston, you know, presumably. And I wonder whether the agreement with the expert who does it will contemplate the differential cost of living here. Because I think sometimes we look at salaries and we think, well, you know, the land use, head of land use in Barrington is paid less than the land use person that you have on Block Island. Well, you know, a box of Cheerios doesn't cost $10 at the grocery store. So I just wanted to make that note that it does have to reflect that. Right.
We can include that in the RFQ. And that's how this is going to be an RFQ. It's not going to be a bid.
Any more comments from the council? Make a motion, we approve the contract between the Rhode Island Council 94, AFSCME, AFL-CIO, Local 2855, New Shoreham Employees Association in the Town of New Shoreham, and New Shoreham School Committee, July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025.
Second.
Seconded by Sven. Is there any public comment? Molly?
I don't think it's like,
Marion?
So what was negotiated with that was there was a pay freeze and based, I don't have the contract in language in front of me, based on revenues that it was revisited, and what happened, what was negotiated was that they received the raise effective October 1st of that particular year, which would have been 2020, I think, yeah, 2020.
so they went from March until October.
No, July to October, yes.
From July. Is the town make any effort to pay town employees raise that they would have had from July to make up for the money that they were going to get, and then they, I mean, it's great of them to accept the pay raise, right? At the time, what's gonna happen. Now we do know what happened. We had all the long, crazy, busy summer, the town didn't get the same money, but our town fees. We want to, you know, taking that opportunity. Yeah. So I'm just wondering if you have to make
You had a, I mean, That was, yeah, it was 2 years ago, and I think there was discussions with the union on that, wasn't there? Yeah, I mean, we negotiated, the town manager negotiated this with the employees union and came to that agreement with them back 2 years ago. So as far as we're concerned, that issue's over.
So the answer is not that they did not get paid their rates for those months. And
The answer is that the town manager and the union negotiated what that settlement was going to be, and it was approved by the union and the town council at the time, 2 years ago.
One question, Marianne, just maybe it's minor, but the timing in the contract here, the agreement shall take effect July 1, I assume, given that we're 10 days later, anything will be retroactive to July 1? Yeah, okay, good. I mean, so in others,
And
if it takes effect, I mean, if we vote on it, pass it right now, if there was any implications for the last 11 days.
So I just want to be clear, the retro days will be, because we're 2 weeks behind. So the
That
retro
answers it.
days will be July 1st, and July 1st was the Friday,
15th.
and July 2nd.
Got it.
So those are the only days.
Okay. So the answer is
You
yes.
said 10 days, and I didn't want.
No, I'm sorry, I was thinking today's the 11th.
Morgan?
My name's Morgan Walsh. I'm wondering if the council can help me understand why we entered the new fiscal year without our contract. And my second question is, since it doesn't seem to work except with Councilor Stover for communication, what is the best way to communicate with the council? Since email only works with Councilor Stover, what is the best way to communicate?
Through the town manager,
Through email to the town manager?
through the town manager, because she's our negotiator with the union.
But I want to be clear that questions about their contract, they need to go to their union. You need to be careful of what they're emailing me, if they're emailing me stuff about their contract. Because if I get in discussion with a union person directly, it could present an unfair labor practice, and it'll be the union that would hit the town with an unfair
It's
labor
incorrect, through your union.
So I just want to be careful with that. That's the.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm not allowed to ask y'all anything. Is that what you're saying?
If I can say it differently, if you want to write about almost anything, I would love to respond. I'd love to have a dialogue, through email. If it is about negotiations, and I hate to say it, it's a lawyer to lawyer, or there's a structure to it. My inkling is go through the structure. Does that make sense?
Well, it wasn't about negotiations.
I know, that's why I didn't respond.
So, well, I said it wasn't about negotiations.
Okay.
Because the union had voted on it, and I was just wondering why it wasn't a priority for the town to make sure that we went into the new fiscal year on July 1st with our contract in place and set.
So this was scheduled for our July 5th meeting, I believe. And we were just down counselors. We had the meeting on July 5th. We had one item on it. You're getting it retroactive, so we're voting on it tonight.
It's hard to have faith that it's going to be retroactive, considering what's happened in the past.
Well, our motion is for July 1st, 2022 to June 30th. So we're at the 11th now. So it is in our motion, like by rule. So it will be from July 1st through June 30th, 2025.
So it's okay that we went into the fiscal year without our contract, that all the town employees did.
It happened, but was there? Yes, to answer your question, yes.
That's fine?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll remember that when I'm in line at the food pantry.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, Mark? Sven? I am in favor. Martha?
Aye.
And Keith. Motion carries 5-0. Item number 14 is to receive legislative update. Mary Ann?
So, couple of things with the legislative update as relates to this year's General Assembly legislative session. After about, I think it's been a good 4 years, maybe up to 5 years, where the town has requested language that was presented regarding affordable housing to increase the AMI from 120 to 140. This year, we were successful with that legislation. And thank you, Cindy was unbelievable, and Cindy Pappison really helping us spearhead that and also sticking with it after so many years of also presenting the legislation and not having it passed. The bond authorization of the $10.4 million has also been passed so that we can move forward on that. The revaluation delay and the revaluation for 1 year was also approved. The tax exemption that was presented to the council by Miriam Matthews from the Manistee Tribal Council Incorporation, that also was approved. The tax classification did not get out of committee, so that did not get approved. The Block Island Power Company, and although this isn't directly related to the town, had legislation that they presented relating to their board members attending conferences, and that also was approved. The legislation session ended earlier than we had anticipated, as well as the budget being signed earlier than we anticipated. That usually, a lot of time, it goes until almost June 30th.
Thank you. Questions from the council? Comments?
Well, I will say that I was very impressed with how the May 4th group, conducted stuff, having testified a couple of times. We went up to Providence, et cetera. And I just thought it was a big help having them, not only shepherd, but at least, be part of the team. So.
Thanks, Tom. Public comment, David? Oh, sorry.
It was the tax classification.
Mark?
And that's a biggie, even though our batting average is great. That is one we really, really, really wanted, so we could start being more creative on Block Island with distribution of taxes. So we'll have to put that one in again next year.
Thank you, Mark. Item number 15, no more comments on 14? Item number 15 is discuss an act on the evaluation tool for the town manager evaluation. Council, have any comments on this? I thought we're done with that.
I think we are done with it. And the one that Millie sent out, at least to the best of my knowledge, the one that sent out is, I hope, the one that we're going to be using on the whenever the 26th. And so I just think it's great that we have all the questions lined up, the basic structure lined up, and I look forward to a productive session. So yes.
Good. What's the action? Yeah, so noted. Okay. Item number 16 is discuss and act on board commissions and committees. A, accept the resignation of Roberta Costa, Board of Canvassers from the Recreation Board. B, announce vacancies. Dear Task Force, there's 3 members, 3 slots there available. Motor Vehicles for Hire is looking for somebody who is not a taxi driver. The Board of Canvassers needs 1 individual. Does the Board of Canvassers, is that a partisan? Is it they need a Democrat, a Republican, or an unaffiliated?
For some reason, I didn't think.
She might have been unaffiliated. I'm just asking. Okay. It's Roberta's slot? Yes. No, I know. I think she's unaffiliated. Okay. Thank you.
Well, this came up with a court case with somebody else.
And we have a slot on the Recreation Board. Item number 17.
Hey, I think we should put Bill McComb, Vin Carlone, and Vin McAloon on the Deer Task Force. Well, actually, I was going through the former police chiefs who are residents of the town of New Shore.
For what, Deer Task Force?
They won't go to meetings though.
Item number 17 on our agenda this evening is the South Fork Wind Farm regarding correspondence regarding South Fork Wind Farm, Section 106, notification, proposed project modification. Another item from Randy Gallistel regarding the harbor policies, administering mooring list and fee policies. Has that been referred to the Harbors Committee? Did the Harbors Committee also receive that?
I think they did. I'm not sure. I can't answer that.
All right. Jen, can you just leave a note for the clerk to have her check to make sure that letter went to the Harbors Committee also? Thank you so much.
Wait a second.
What?
Oh,
Item 18 is approve the minutes from June 15th, 2022, open and closed. If anybody has any issues with the closed session, we will have to go into closed session to amend those. Has anybody read and taken in and have any issues with the minutes from June 15th?
Skim them. I don't think it was. It was just not approved. There was no specific action. Was there taken on it? It says it was not approved. I don't think we didn't make, nobody made a motion to deny it.
Martha's right. It wasn't approved. You approved 5 of them and the 6th one wasn't approved, so it wasn't part of the discussion.
And it is noted that it was not approved.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
Aye.
Yes.
Had sent, I don't know you. That's why I see your kind of, if you'd like to speak to your correspondence, feel free to do so. I'm sorry that,
That's all right.
So about 10 years ago, I put my son's name on the list for a private mooring. Those of you who are boating things will know that having a private mooring is no small matter in Great Salt Pond. Because it was about 10 years ago, I stopped by the harbor masters to ask them to see where he'd risen to on the list. And I was stunned to learn that he'd been removed from the list. He'd been removed from the list because in October of 2021, the Harbor Board decided to charge a fee of $15 a year to keep yourself on the list. And I have no problem with that. I do have a problem with the way it was implemented. So they said, well, we'll mail people notice of this, and they have to have paid their fee by the 15th of March. So if you don't live on the island, if you're not in the know and you don't live on the island, and you've been on the list for 10 years, as my son had, the chances are that you've changed your address, as he had, are quite high. So of course, he never got the notification. So, I mean, I think you can see that on something that operates on a time scale of decades, to allow 6 months for a procedure that removes people who have been slowly but steadily rising through the list seems, to put it mildly, unfair. And it seems to me it's fairly easily remedied. I would suggest that this council might tell the harbor or instruct the Harbor Board to temporarily restore the list to the state it was in October and in March 1st of 2022, to extend the deadline for the first payment to October of 2022, so that the great many people who are on that list but who are only here in the summer have some opportunity to learn about it. And put a monthly notice in the Block Island Bulletin Board, again, so that people, if I hadn't happened to stop into the harbor, I would have no clue. I'd have come by 7 years from now and they said, oh, we took you off the list 7 years ago. So I think obviously they should make a determined effort to contact people. They can't assume that people who've been there for 20 years are still where they were 20 years ago. So for example, they could put it on the BIBB, but also send notice to all taxpayers of New Shoreham, which my family is and has been for 50 years. So I appreciate your listening to my plea. Would be interested to hear your discussion.
Thank you so much. I think off the top of my head, I certainly understand your concern there. And your letter was sent to the Harbors Committee, and they would have to take act. The way it goes is that they're an advisory board to us. And they would have to, this would have to be an agenda item on their agenda. And then they would discuss it and vote on how they would recommend handling this to us. So I'm just wondering if the Harbors has Harbors had you an agenda item of this to discuss this?
So about this, just wasn't sure how the system worked. If I recall correctly, what I was told, the next meeting of the Harbor Board isn't until October. Things are very busy in the harbor during the summer.
I see.
Now, I may be wrong about that.
No, you may be right.
I remember that I was discussing with the harbor master what I could do to appeal. And it seemed like the only thing that I could do while I was still here was come to the council.
Okay, yeah, they don't meet. We can confirm they don't meet in the summer.
They don't meet in the summer, but they can't meet in the summer. I don't know. Have you sent a letter to the Harbors Committee?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Have you sent a letter to the Harbors Committee?
No, I have not. So I will, obviously.
But yeah, I would send a letter to the Harbors Committee. But you spoke to the harbor master, and the harbor master informed you to send us a letter? I'm just trying to get the harbor master. Did you say you spoke to the harbor master and the harbor master informed you to send us a letter?
No, I don't think that would be accurate. I asked her what I could do. She said, well, you could appeal. And I said, to whom would I appeal? I think she said the Harbor Master Committee. And here's the part I'm uncertain about. I believe she said, but they won't, or it emerged in our discussion that they wouldn't meet until October.
Yeah.
And she indicated that things were too busy in the summer to act on this.
It's true.
So it left me feeling fairly helpless.
Well, you want to get on record though with the Harbors Board, even if they're not meeting until
Okay. So
October.
I should address something to the Harbors Board. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Item number 19. Discuss and act on a letter of intent for the Rhode Island Municipal Matching Grant Fund for Multi-Purpose Community Facility Projects regarding property negotiations. This discussion may be held in executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465A5. Any discussions or considerations related to the acquisition or lease of real property for public purposes or the disposition of publicly held property wherein advanced public information will be detrimental to the interests of the public. Nick, is there anything we can say about that in public before we potentially go into closed session? Thank you. The reason I'm asking is I'm going to go on to item 20 and ask the same question. so we can bundle 19 and 20 into one motion.
With respect to number 20.
Thank you so much. Item number 20 on the agenda is discuss and act on litigation, moped settlement agreement. These items may be discussed in closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42465A2, sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation, or work sessions pertaining to collective bargaining or litigation. I will make a motion to go into closed session on items 19 and 20. Oh, sorry, Bill.
Is there any update on the agreement that can be made, whether we proceed or whatever?
I'm sorry, number 20?
Yeah.
I don't believe so. I haven't heard anything.
Just as to the procedure or whatever.
Oh, the procedure. I think we're gonna be discussing that in closed session amongst other things, so, I don't have anything to say on it. I really don't. Motion is made. Is there a second? Seconded by Sven. All those in favor, Martha?
Aye.
Keith? And Mark? I'm in favor, and Sven. Motion carries 5-0. If we can repeat, after, we will.
Yeah, and I wasn't referring to the details of it, but just to what time it's behind, so what, because I know so many times.
Okay, you're welcome. Closed session, we will be now going to closed session.